All right, people. I'm ordinarily not appearing in the beginning of videos, but I'm giving the fair use warning to any copyright trolls at 60 minutes. This will be fair use par excellence. I've got to show you this right now.
Over the top, like the Democrats are a party of pedophiles.
I would definitely say so. They support grooming children.
They are not pedophiles. Why would you say that?
Democrats.
This is what you call, this is the argument tactic called, come on. It's the Peter Griffin argument. Come on. They're not. Why would you say that? Because they are. No, they're not. Come on. But it gets better. It gets better.
Democrats support, even Joe Biden, the president himself, supports children being sexualized and having transgender surgeries. Sexualizing children is what pedophiles do to children.
Wow.
Okay.
That's also called the Homer Simpson rebuttal. But you got to see that face. If this does not become a meme, I have failed in my attempt to make a meme.
And having transgender surgeries, sexualizing children is what pedophiles do to children.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, and now that I think about it, that oddly enough looks like that famous meme that they made of Trump. Wow. Okay. Great. First of all, was it a debate, Leslie, or was it a question? Did you not like the answer to that question and that's the best rebuttal that you had? Well, glorious. Let me move my head to the side here. No, not that way. This way. Just so everybody doesn't make any phallus jokes. This is a piece of driftwood that I got at a river. And so that everybody can make the phallus jokes. I did get it because it looked like a phallus. But it's also a beautiful piece of driftwood because Viva, in my spirituality and my Zenness, is I'm into Zen. Now, some of you are asking, why are we not talking about Trump? We are living in the day when they are going. I don't know if they're going to do a perp walk. I don't know if he's going to be in cuffs, but we're living in the day where they're going to actually arrest. They're going to arrest in a former president, potential future president. Not much different than the corruption that we saw in Brazil. Not much different than the corruption we saw in Russia, right? And they're only going to do it once, people. They're only going to do it once. But some of you might be asking, why on earth are we not talking about it? It's going to be on all day, peeps. And the guest for today is someone who's busier than any normal 16 or 17-year-old person. I was going to say kid, but I think that's demeaning because this kid's far beyond a kid. This gentleman, this young man, is busier than most 16 or 17-year-olds typically are. And you may or may not have heard of him. If you have heard of him, you're going to want to watch this. If you haven't heard of him, you're going to want to watch this. We're going to start in Canada. I've got about an hour with him, maybe a little less than an hour. He's going to explain what's going on in Canada, what happened to him. And then when he goes to yet another appointment, then we're going to talk Trump. All right. His name is Josh Alexander. For those of you who don't know, the headlines are that he was arrested for saying that there are only two sexes or two genders. There's nuance to that. It's like, that guy out of BC saying he was arrested for misgendering his kid. And there's a little more to it. Not that it attenuates the absurdity, just that it will allow those who want to say, it's not what you think it is, therefore stop saying that, to say that. But the more you know, the more you know. So I'm going to bring on Josh Alexander. You may have seen him on Tucker Carlson. We luckily have more than 3 minutes to delve into this story. 3 minutes is not enough for anything. No shade on Tucker. Just, I love this format. So we're going to bring him in. We are live on Rumble. Let me just make sure that we are currently good and live on Rumble. We are. We are also currently good and live on Locals, where I will be going after the Rumble. We're going to be going to Rumbles at some point today. And that's it. Okay. Without further ado, let us bring in the man of the hour, Josh Alexander. 3, 2, 1. Booyakasha. Josh, how goes the battle, sir?
Not too bad. Yourself?
Not bad. I see you're wearing one of them Trump-inspired Save Canada hats. Okay, look, before we get into the details of the story, for those who don't know, 30,000-foot overview, who are you and have you turned 17 yet?
Yeah, actually, I just turned 17 last week, I believe. I guess the quick summary would be I started activism kind of when I was 14 years old. The COVID-19 restrictions were beginning. and something seemed off. Even at 14 years old, I could tell that it was being manipulated and corrupted, and it was just typical crisis corruption. So I started organizing student walkouts and some protests, and there's a lot of backstory behind that, but I can't get into all of it immediately. But yeah, I was the leader of the high school walkouts against mandates and online learning across Canada. And anyways, I ran into some issues with the school board there. And I was in the public board at the time, and they were suspending me. The cops kept getting called to my school, and all in all, I ended up graduating. I graduated grade 10, and at the beginning of grade 11, I decided to switch to the Catholic board. Hopefully, I was hoping that the Catholic board would align more so with my Christian beliefs, and I maybe have a bit of a fresh start after a rather dramatic couple of years in high school. But anyways, that's not how it ended up going. I switched to the Catholic board, and I was informed by female students, some of my peers, that males were using their washrooms, and they were uncomfortable and concerned about this. However, I mean, in our day and age, it's a very controversial topic, and nobody wanted to talk about it. So I decided to voice my opinion on it and kind of voice their concerns. And this came up in a classroom format. It also came up in the office. I was labeled, the typical racist, sexist, homophobic bigot. I got the whole list you get from the left wing whenever you proclaim the truth. But I just continued to give my message respectfully. I directed my message at the school board rather than the individual students who were violating the females' privacy, because I also recognize that it's not necessarily a boat that they were naturally put into. Their parents and the system encouraged them into it and confused them, and I have a level of sympathy for them. So I had a message directed at the board. We organized a protest, and I was met by quite a few counter protesters. Long story short, I got suspended, and then I was welcomed back under certain conditions, which I didn't agree to. The conditions were that I wasn't allowed to speak to certain students. I was permanently banned from math class and religion class, and there's a couple others, but I didn't agree to them. And in response to that, they decided to give me an exclusion order. And when I decided that the exclusion order was a violation of my freedoms, and I felt that I would be condoning a discriminatory act by abiding by it and complying with this exclusion order, I decided to return to school, and that's where I was met by Ontario Provincial Police and arrested.
Okay, we're going to unpack actually all of that in the detail that's going to allow people to not make sense of it, but at least to understand how this happens in a Kafkaesque world of insanity. Just to back it up straight to the beginning, if I may ask, how many siblings do you have in your family?
I have 3 siblings.
3. So there's 4 kids.
Yeah.
Born and raised religious, or did you discover religion, I guess, as an adolescent?
Well, I mean, I was raised in a evangelical church. I grew up in that environment, but in the end, it was my decision, and I've chosen to follow Christ, and that's the path I'm on right now.
And so 4 kids. Are you the youngest, the oldest? Where do you fit in there?
I'm the second youngest.
Second youngest. Okay. Born and raised in Canada. Obviously, I can tell. Maybe are you Northern Ontario, or where are you from originally, or born?
I'm from well, not quite Southern Ontario, but around Ottawa. And I was in the States briefly. I'm a dual citizen. I was in Arizona. And then I came back here, and I've been here most of my life.
Okay, very, very interesting. Now, when I was in high school and when I was your age, I was a royal pain in the ass. Some would say probably retrospectively that I suffered from oppositional defiance disorder. When I discovered religion, it wasn't out of a sincere belief of religion itself per se, but it was more motivated by pissing off the school that I was at. It was a private non-Jewish school. So I discovered by wearing not just a kippah, but like one of those Moroccan kippahs that go down on your head. I could piss off the administration. And so my act of defiance, though noble in principle, was actually probably more motivated by rebelliousness than sincere belief. When was the first act of opposition that you took as a teenager? Like, what was the first step where you said, I'm rebelling? And was it a sincere rebellion or the novelty of rebelling against authority?
So I was actually, I guess I skipped a step. I was homeschooled up until grade 7. So I only entered the public system partway through grade 7. So I guess it would have been there that I first kind of contested the school on the national anthem. They had been playing a very disrespectful anthem. And I mean, I was successful. We sort of campaigned to get a more respectful anthem in the building, and that we were successful at that. But that wasn't very controversial at the time. That was just me deciding to voice my opinion on something publicly. But I don't even know. There's been so much over the years because the education.
Were you a rebellious kid? If you're homeschooled, I guess you can't rebel against the administration without rebelling against your parents. But I mean, what's that like? We have stereotypes as to what's that like. Are you a homebody? Were you a rebellious kid even as a homeschooler?
No, I wouldn't. I was never a rebellious kid by my own standards. When you look at the world today, I mean, just being a Christian and upholding your values means you have to be rebellious. The whole stereotype of rebellion has completely changed just within a couple generations, and so it really depends how you define rebellious. I was never a problematic student. I mean, I won the citizenship award in my elementary school after only being there for 2 years. So it wasn't like I was in trouble for any misbehavior. It was just controversial topics that I would voice my opinions on.
So you're homeschooled. When do you get into the public system as relates to temporally the lockdowns and COVID?
I would have joined 1 year before, I believe.
Okay.
I would have joined. So I joined the school partway through grade 7. And then it was just past halfway through grade 8 that the restrictions started to affect us.
What were the well, tell us what the restrictions were like. This will help explain your second act of rebellion. But what was that life like for a 15-year-old kid?
Yeah, so I mean, it would start slowly, and over time it would prove to just get worse and worse. But for one, there was they told us that we're just going off school for 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and it ended up being a lot longer than that. We did some online learning, and then I don't even it's really messed up. There's been so much action and chaos the last couple of years. It's hard to keep track of everything that happened, but it went from online learning to in person again briefly. I believe it was at the beginning of my high school. Yeah, I from the end of halfway through grade 8 till the beginning of high school, I had no in-person learning. And then in the beginning of high school, we had to wear masks and socially distance and all these crazy rules, which proved to be an issue from my first 15 seconds in high school.
Okay, very interesting. And so when school goes, what sort of proactive protest did you do for the COVID measures once you went back to school?
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't want to make too much of a deal out of it at the start. I guess I would have been 14 at the time. My goal was to just get through high school, but it started to become more of an issue over time. There was too much of a stigma from staff members towards myself, and it proved to be a bit of an issue. There was also some other topics of debate that were going on in the building at the time. For instance, the Canadian flag was at half-mast for 6 months, I believe. And this was a violation of the flag code. I felt it was disrespectful. And so myself and some of my crew, who now make up Safe Canada, were running out of the school every single day and raising the flag. And then they would lower it and we would raise it and they would lower it. And anyways, this went on for months. Anyways, it got to the point where there was one day where just in my morning classes, I had already raised the flag 4 times in one day. And anyways, I hear him get called over the PA and they're calling me down to the office. And so I run out the back door, I sprint towards the flag, and I see the principal coming around the corner. It was a race for the flag, and I won, and I got the flag up, and my hand was all bleeding, and walk towards the door, and they tell me I need to put on a mask and stuff. I said, sorry, I can't, I'm wounded. And so anyways, this struck quite a controversy in the board. There ended up being a big board meeting about me raising the flags at the school, and they told me I'd be suspended if I did it again. I challenged it, said it was disrespectful, and anyways, they called for a meeting, and the flags went up all across the board the next day. So
Yeah, why was the flag at half mast? Was that in relation to the residential school situation? Was it because this was to commemorate the I'm not saying this to be belittling. I'm actually going to say this just to illustrate the absurdity of it. But they were at half mast. We noticed this everywhere for an extended period of time, and I think the rationale was that it was to commemorate the tragedy of the residential schooling issue, which had been recently discovered by the media, though known to everyone for decades. That was the reason why they were at half mast.
Yes, that was the reason, and I addressed that, and I spoke to them and I said, look, I get it. It was a tragedy. It was awful. What happened in those residential schools, and I said, the flags. I mean, if you want to lower them as a sign of respect, a sign of solidarity, but do not keep them down for 6 months. I mean, they were supposed to be down for each student or something, and a day for each student. And I said we didn't lower the flags for every soldier that died fighting for our country. That's not like it loses its value lowering the flag when you do it every single day. And then there was also a friend of mine at the school that passed away, and the flag, of course, didn't get lowered for them. Usually they would lower the flag if something like that happened because it was already been lowered for months, so there's no significance in it. And
okay, let me ask a very personal question. Can I ask how that student passed away?
it was health issues. They were disabled.
And you say, disrespectful to the flag. I also viewed it as being demoralizing to a nation where everyone's like, why is the flag down for 6 months? And I'll maybe say my bit here. Disrespectful in that the media and the government purported that this was a new thing. We just discovered the extent of this tragedy. They had known for a decade. It was just Justin Trudeau that decided to weaponize it come election season. And oddly enough, they're lowering the flag to commemorate the atrocity of the residential school system, which was a government atrocity at the time performed for the greater good and for the good of the kids when they were ripping Native kids from their families to assimilate them. And then when they were in these institutions, abusing them and experimenting on them, done by the government or with the expressed authorization of the government. And the rationale was for the good of the kids. Yeah. So what happened? Bloody hand. You go in, you say, I can't put the mask on, and you won the race to the flag. What happens to you after this?
Well, they actually, in typical school board fashion, they decided to only address the issue and called me to the office to discuss it the final day before Christmas break. This has actually happened now on my Catholic board. It seems to be a pattern they like to use because we go on break for 2 weeks and they don't have to see me for 2 weeks after that. So they addressed it, and I said, all right, I want names. Give me names. I'll go and talk to them. We'll discuss why the flag's down. If otherwise, I'm just going to keep raising it myself. Anyways, like I said, they called for a meeting, and the flags went up all across the board, and so that was kind of our first success. We had been posting on our social medias for Safe Canada, just of us raising the flag. Occasionally, we'd make some videos out of it, but it was very small things like that. That's just an example of what would happen at the schools. But then, yeah, the convoy was starting to roll around. We had already done one protest with 4 students. There's 4 of us that walked out and went to the road, and we got met by some community supporters. But like the protests in the schools were quite pathetic at the time. When the convoy started to roll around, there was a lot more people eager to end these restrictions, and they started to listen to what I was saying. And I decided to organize a protest. I'd say maybe 40 students came out of a school of 300, and the cops were called. I spent hours in the office negotiating. The principals told me I'd be suspended, and anybody who attended would be put in detention for as many minutes as they walked out for.
For attending the convoy or for protesting along
For
with
attending my protest
Okay.
in
And you're-
solidarity with the convoy.
Wow. All right. Now, hold on. Before you carry on, everybody on YouTube, we're going to end it here. And we're going to go to Rumble. It changes nothing on our end. Josh, I'm just going to click the link. We're going to go over, and not because we're going to have a conversation that we can't have on YouTube, just because. And I'll post the entire interview on YouTube tomorrow. So we are going to end on YouTube in 3, 2, 1. Now, okay. And we're still live here. Okay. So they're threatening anybody who attends your protest with suspension. Josh, I presume I'm not imagining. This is now at the religious school, at the Catholic school.
No, this is at the public board.
Okay, so now you're at public school, at the public board. I presume, not that I'm going to accuse them of double standards, I presume they have allowed for protests for such movements as BLM, gay pride, all those other things. I presume there have been protests that students have been not only allowed to participate in, but encouraged to participate in.
Even more ironically than those topics, they had a protest against the Doug Ford's cuts to education fund. So when it affected them, they were encouraging students to walk out. But yeah, so there was obvious double standard there. I organized multiple protests. It started spreading quickly. Our posters, I never put my name on it. We never really said anything about it. We just we'd send it out, and the Facebook mom pretty good at jumping on and supporting us and spreading it across the country, and it spread pretty quick. I still hear about schools that walked out. There's some in British Columbia. There was a lot in Nova Scotia, all across Ontario. But yeah, they were everywhere. And I remember at one of our final protests, there was a Indigenous girl with a Every Child Matters flag. And I got pulled into the office and basically told we shouldn't have that at our protest. And this is after I was demoralized for raising the flags during the that were down for 6 months in solidarity with that issue. So it shows like what a double standard there is when an Indigenous girl protests for her own freedoms that are now being stripped away, as they had been in history. It was an issue for them. But if we dared respect the flag and raise it as it should be, we had to be punished.
The irony also in blacklisting protests against the COVID mandates, they are actually, the school and the government are indirectly penalizing disproportionately the Indigenous communities that don't necessarily want to get the vaccine for historical reasons, i.e. residential schools or other. There is no logic to it except for the fact that it's hierarchy. And you shall not have the same rights that they have. What was the ultimate outcome? Like, you don't strike me as being someone who's going to stop the protesting because the school told you to. How did the rest of that year go?
Well, yeah, I remember my principal pulled me aside. We had been. I spent much time just in the office rather than in class, being scolded by the principals for my unacceptable behavior, but they told me that they were no longer going to facilitate my protest. I said, "You never have. You've only ever punished us for it." But I said I'm gonna keep doing it, and it'll be up to the student body whether they walk out or not. So, anyways, a day later or so, my vice principal pulls me aside in the hallway and says, "So I just got off the phone with the Ontario Provincial Police, and I was informing them about your protest that's planned for this Friday, and he said they told me that there's this thing called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and you have a right to peaceful assembly." I looked at him and was like, "No, there's not a chance." And he didn't know what the Charter of Rights and Freedoms was. The Ontario Provincial Police had to explain to my vice principal what my right to peaceful assembly was.
Okay, but now like that can be interpreted in two different ways. You're sure that this principal was not on your side and he's being tongue in cheek, like, so they explained it to me and now you get to do it, or was this guy bona fide ignorant and didn't know that
he was ignorant? He was very ignorant.
Okay, so the cops explained.
there had been times where he was shouting at me through gritted teeth and stuff. Like he would lose his cool. And
So the police explained to him that you have the right to protest. It's just that nasty, pesky little charter right, which they found a way to abrogate in Nova Scotia over the summer. But I presume that doesn't quell any of the opposition from the school.
I mean, I was suspended a number of times after that, but like I said, I was able to graduate from that one. It was a little less hostile. Had I stayed another year, I don't know what would have happened. But it was after all that drama and stuff. The restrictions had been lifted. I'd done my job, and I just decided to get a fresh start and maybe actually be more successful in the Catholic board. And that's when I switched to the Catholic board for the beginning of grade 11, and that didn't go over so well.
Well, we'll get there. Just one last question. Feel free not to answer it. Did your grades take a ding, if not from the distraction of what you're doing, but rather from the backlash of the teachers who have some discretionary power when grading stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they definitely were affected by it. I mean, a lot of it was backlash. I remember on a science test, I got asked to create basically a socialist plan for how the government can cut down on the climate effect that our businesses are having. And I said no. I said I'm not doing this. This is science class. This is not. I don't have to write up some socialist ideology. And I got doctored points for that. So there's a number of things just with the stigma against me from the staff. So I did lose grades, and just with the distraction and all the chaos going on, I was quite busy. And so yeah, it affected my grades.
It would have been funny just to have an essay showing that the greenhouse gases are in fact the biggest, potentially one of the biggest hoaxes of all time, or the biggest fake news theories of all time. Okay, interesting. And by the way, just so no one clips that out of context, humans pollute. Pollution is bad. That's about where I think the agreement will end. All right, so you graduate grade 10 from the public board. You then say, I'm going to go into a Catholic school. Surely we will not have the same problems we have. We're a religious in spirit, in philosophy. We respect the individual. We respect the rights. We respect the Bible, presumably, in which we, to which we pray. How does it start? Does it start off acrimonious, or does it get acrimonious quickly?
I know that there had been a couple of mentions of where my teachers had said they had contact with my previous school, and they knew about me. I mean, it wasn't like it was a secret who I was. I was fairly well known already. And if not, students and staff figured out very quickly what I stood for, just because of how rare it is to see a young person embrace traditional values. But yeah, I mean, I was going there after my experience in the other board. I was going there simply for school, and then I'd leave. I didn't really socialize with anybody too much, nor did I want to. And the only time anybody would really hear me talk was while in debate with the teacher. So, a lot of people didn't even know my name. They would call me, my nickname was just Freedom. People would walk by in the hall and say, "Hey, Freedom." And I'd just keep walking and say hello. But yeah, I mean, it was, the dynamics were very strange. It was like I'd just go there, argue with the teachers about what the ideology they were pushing on the students, and then I'd go home and then come back and do it again the next day. So it got off to a bad start immediately.
Dude, they nicknamed you Freedom, and you're not being glib or ironic or sarcastic. Your nickname was Freedom in school?
Yeah.
Life can't get any better than that. In retrospect, that's going to be the greatest memory that you'll have of high school, if it's not already. That is actually the greatest thing I've ever heard. And that people understand what you're doing, though they don't necessarily have either the audacity, the courage, or the oppositional defiance disorder to act on it. Oh, that's so cool. Okay, fine. So when does the poop hit the fan as relates to the most recent incidents? And before that question, some people are going to say you are a hammer looking for a nail. You're looking for things to get mad about. Why can't you just be quiet? Let the boys change in the girls' locker room. What happened to set this off?
Well, yeah, I mean, I a lot of people just consider me rebellious. We had just talked about this, but that's not really the case. I've seen firsthand the effects that the ridiculousness our boards push has had. I mean, the suicide rates, the depression rates, just the morale in general. It's awful. And when you have, well, first I watched the board endorse and defend the restrictions that so dramatically affected the students. And then I watched them push their gender ideology. And then even, I mean, on my first day in class, my first day in my law class at the school, it's a new school. I've just sat down, first couple minutes there. And the teacher introduces the class and says, all right, we're going to be looking at the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and our different rights there. For instance, the right to peaceful assembly. She says, we're going to look at lawful assembly and unlawful assembly. And we'll use some different examples. And then she says that the Freedom Convoy is an unlawful assembly. And this is before it's gone through the courts and everything. And I said, go, wait a second. Like, I'm a new kid. Nobody knows who I am. I'm just sitting there. I raise my hand. I go, wait a second. You're a law teacher. You should know this hasn't gone through the courts. It's not unlawful. And I said it was a peaceful assembly. It by nature it was a peaceful assembly, and we were protesting for chartered rights. And she said, well, no, you have to have a permit to protest on Parliament Hill. I said, no, you don't. I've organized protests on Parliament Hill before. All you need is a permit if you want to use the electricity or the porta potties provided by the city or certain things like that. And she just kind of went red and said, okay, we'll get into that in future classes. So
I need details to satisfy my curiosity. Is this teacher young or old?
Fairly old.
Fairly old. A woman you've already mentioned. Canadian?
Yep.
Any other indications as to ideological perspective of this teacher before this incident?
For me, not before this incident. It didn't take long to learn quite a few different things about this individual, like a raging feminist.
Nothing's wrong with that. Nothing's wrong with that when done properly.
Well, modern feminism is. Anyways, she was also I believe she was a Greenpeace advocate or something. A big fan of the Green Party.
It all makes sense. And by the way, that was sort of tongue in cheek. I studied feminist law at McGill University, and the feminism that they taught us, feminism, was that sex was inherently rape. I mean, it was inherently a male-dominated, degrading to woman thing. This was Andrea Dworkin, and I wrote a thesis saying that's fundamentally impossible to ascribe morality to an act of nature, and I got a C- on that paper. The teacher, when I wrote Ms. and her last name, crossed off the Ms. and put doctor, and I never forgot that. So yeah, when feminism is no longer women have the choice, but women must do as the feminists say, that's an ideology and not a philosophy. Okay, so you learn this quickly, and you've publicly embarrassed your teacher in front of the entire class, and you're right. It's not like there's room for debate. You're objectively right, which is going to make her exponentially angrier at you. Did any other incidents with that teacher, or was that it for her?
Oh, there was plenty every day. I mean, this is kind of the point I'm getting at. It's not necessarily that I'm rebellious. I just have traditional views, and I'm not going to compromise, especially when it affects young people, impressionable minds. I'm not going to sit there and pretend it's normal, pretend it's okay that they're being indoctrinated at a supposedly unbiased education facility. So I would always speak out against these things because I felt it was the right thing to do. And it would be daily, there would be a different issue, and we'd be debating that. I mean, when I was addressed by the female students saying that males were using their washrooms, that was something that personally, as a young man, I felt an obligation to speak out, more so than anything else. When a young lady comes up and talks to you, it's my job to protect and provide. So that's what I attempted to do.
Oh, that's going to piss off the feminists, Josh. But now let me back up for 1 second. What the hell is going on? I don't understand this. You're at a Catholic school, and I say this without judgment. One presumes that a religious institution is going to espouse religious beliefs. If you don't like those religious beliefs, and there's debatable argument there, like, I don't believe in circumcision. I believe, it's bad for the baby. I don't believe in judging gays. I mean, look, I understand that. So if you don't like it, don't go to a religious school. How does this, you're at a Catholic religious school. How does it come to be that a biological male is anywhere near the girls' locker room?
Well, the Catholic board is really only Catholic in name. They're now publicly funded, so they cater to the public funding. So when I had ended up in all this trouble, I went to the office and I said, okay, I've already addressed you about these concerns. You don't want to talk about it. However, you're a Catholic school. You claim to recognize the supremacy of the Word of God. Let's open the Word of God and let's talk about it. And they said, okay, we'll get we can't do that with you, but we'll bring in a chaplain and a priest and we'll sit down and do that. I said, all right, let's do it tomorrow. And they said, no, we can't do it tomorrow. I said, all right, the next day. And I offered them 4 different dates, and to this day, it hasn't happened. So they claim to be a Catholic school, but they certainly don't live it. I personally am not Catholic. I'm a born again Christian, but we have a very similar belief system and uphold the same fundamental values. And they didn't want to entertain any of that discussion.
Well, it's an interesting observation how the government co-ops or hijacks religious education through the public funding as you become dependent on the dollar and no longer an independent religious institution. Okay, and so what is the debate? How does it come to be that there are biological males, that there's a trans student at this religious institution who insists on changing in the locker room despite their male genitalia? What is the incident? Without naming names, I don't care who the people are. How does it happen? How does it come to be?
Well, apparently it had been happening for some time before I had obviously attended the school. I didn't even know about it until they came up to me, and these female students came up to me and complained. Like I said, I spoke out against it. It was incredibly controversial. I went to the office, I talked to the principal, and I said, okay, there's males using the female washrooms. And he said, they're females. And I said, no, they're males. And I'm sitting here in the office, and he tells me that these males are now females. And I said, no, females don't have penises. And it got kind of quiet in the office, and we're both kind of just sitting there staring at each other. And he goes, well, that's your opinion. And he said, we don't live in a world of absolute reality. And anyways, I said his stance was ridiculous, and it needs to be discussed further. And he just kind of blew it off. A female student came in and had the same conversation with him. And again, he didn't take her concern seriously either. And it was at that point that I decided to organize the protest.
I need to highlight the absurdity. You have an adult male telling you, in the name of feminism, purportedly, you have a feminist teacher, that women are not women. That's a matter of opinion, and that a man can usurp the identity of a woman, and it's feminism. This is progressivism. And he's telling you it's a matter of opinion that someone with a penis, because I presume these kids have not gone through the surgery, which is itself a whole separate debate, intact. So you have an intact male in the locker room with a female, a woman, a girl, who comes to Mr. Freedom, because you're the only person that they can come to now, knowing that you might do something about this to vocalize for them what the administration is not listening to. That is, it's a world that's gone batshit crazy. I'm sorry to swear. It's gone batshit crazy. So you organize a protest, and I presume the protest is what gets you into the biggest trouble?
Well, yes. I mean, when you look at it from a factual perspective, yes, that's what got me in trouble. They will refuse and say that it was my comments in class. So I announced the protest, and 2 days before the protest date, they suspend me indefinitely with a possibility of expulsion.
Let me stop you there. They suspend you 2 days before the protest. Protest hasn't happened yet, so they've got to find a pretext or an explanation for the suspension. Yeah. Okay, so what is it?
So they will say that they didn't suspend me because of the protest, but I mean, the conversations had happened a month before, and there was no discipline for that. It wasn't until I announced the protest that became a problem.
Well, what was their basis or their explanation for suspending you?
I mean, it took quite a while to get to get them to explain what they had against me, but it ended up being that while in a debate in my math class, my teacher had said that had defended male breastfeeding and said it was okay. And actually, there's two teachers that did it. But while speaking with the one class, I said that male breastfeeding is pedophilia, and that didn't go over very well. And then in that same class, there was a transgender student who left their chair in the debate while I'm being shouted at and berated by class and the teacher as well. And they leave their chair and they're shouting at me, you can be whatever you want to be and all that. And I'm saying, no, I said, no, there's only male and female. You're born one or the other. And that's one of the allegations against me. That was considered bullying because it was said to a transgender student who was out of their seat coming towards me. But anyways, those are the main allegations against me. And they still stand to this day.
So those are the two statements that if a man breastfeeds a baby, what does that even mean? I mean, what does it even mean? Is he putting on a prosthetic breast that's filled with milk like they have so that men can bond with their baby? Or did the teacher mean a man sticking his non-lactating hairy nipple in the mouth of a baby?
Yes, that is correct. And that's where it got pretty awkward in class because he's now teacher's shouting, he's losing his cool. And I just said, I mean, we're running a fine line into pedophilia here. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, for one, you're shouting about children's sexuality while you're in a math class. And secondly, you're now endorsing, and it got pretty awkward in the class when I said it, but it needed to be said. I said, you're now endorsing a man forcing a baby to suck his nipples. And it got kind of quiet. And I don't think the conversation went much farther after that.
Josh, it's obligatory. It's obligatory. Never will there be a better time for this clip than now. Because you know that if it made it onto the family clip, the reason why it was a joke on the family clip is because it's wildly offensive. This is just... Okay, that's well, yeah. So they retroactively go and try and convict you for what some might say, is past the statute of limitations for a legitimate excuse to suspend a student. If it was so bad, it would have been done at the time, or even an issue made of it at the time. They suspend you for those two statements. And when you say debate, by the way, you mean an argument in class. There's no organized debate between a teacher or students. This is just like a fight in class where you tell the teacher in real time, this is madness and you should understand it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. So they suspend you 2 days before the protest. And is this where they give you the conditions for your suspension, or did it come later?
So I ended up being suspended for 20 school days. And just before Christmas break, what do you know? They say, all right, well, you're welcome back. Come have a meeting. We sat down, we had a meeting. And they said that they gave me those conditions. You aren't allowed to attend math class or religion class. You'll be in a separate segregated room. And the teacher will deliver you work every day, and you'll just do it on your own in there. And you also won't be allowed to speak to, they gave me two names, two students.
One, I presume, was the transgender kid?
Both of them, I think. Well, the thing is, they gave me these names, and I didn't even know who one of them was. So
because it was not...
These are students I've apparently bullied, and I didn't even know who the one was. They had to explain and give a description of who it was, and I had no idea. So that shows how much time I've spent plotting and bullying this kid. But
well, yeah, you could bully them through silence. So considering silence is violence, you can actually assault someone with your absence of words. They give you the two names of the kids. I'm actually just still trying to figure out how you have how transgender students decide to attend a school that is religious, that fundamentally by the origins of the religion might have, moral and philosophical issues with this. I mean, I guess it's conceivable, to the extent that it doesn't, the kids don't try to dictate policy, but it sounds like that's not the case here. So the conditions they give you: suspended, no debate, no appeal that you've had as of now, but suspended. Here are the conditions, to which you say,
well, I said, no, I'm not abiding by those. They're discriminatory. I ended up getting my lawyer, James Kitchen from Liberty Coalition Canada, and he said he, on my behalf, contacted the school, said Josh won't be abiding by those conditions, and he'll be attending all of his classes. And they responded to that and said that was a threat. And they said that they felt my presence in the building would be detrimental to the physical and mental well-being of the pupils. So they're going to have to exclude me indefinitely. So they give me this exclusion order.
An exclusion order under Ontario law. That's basically like if you go on the premises, it's trespassing.
Yes. Well, it's basically, I'd never heard of it before. Basically, it's a suspension, but it's non-disciplinary. I haven't done anything that they can punish, but they feel I'm a threat in the building, so they're going to have me excluded.
Okay, and then the penalty to violating the exclusion order is basically a deemed trespass, so that if you come on the property, they're going to say it's trespass, and that's how they're going to get you arrested.
It took another step before that. So they give me this exclusion order. I talk to my lawyer. I say, I don't feel I can condone this. This is just, I'm going to school. I've been out now for 20 school days, actually more at this point. This is ridiculous. I'm going back to class. I haven't done anything wrong. So I go to school. They run up to me. They were confused. They were panicked. And they tell me that I need to leave the building. I'm not welcome on the property. They tell me I need to meet with them. And I said, sure, I'll meet with you as long as my lawyer's on the phone. Otherwise, no. And they didn't want to agree to that. And so they followed me class to class, and they would write down, well, it appeared they'd write down anything I said. And I finished up that day. I left. And when I got home, I was informed that I had a trespassing notice as well as another 5-day suspension. The trespassing notice was to go till the end of the semester. So I ended up waiting all of that stuff out. And the police phoned me in that period and asked for an update and stuff, like they didn't already know I had a trespassing notice that had been sent to them as well. And I waited it all out. I've now lost 4 credits for that semester. I'm going to be getting 4 new classes a day. What would appear to be a fresh start, new teachers, everything. And all my suspensions and exclusions and trespasses are over. And I contact the school, or my lawyer does on my behalf, and he says, all right, it's over. Josh is returning to school. He's going to continue to adhere to his religious beliefs, and he expects not to be discriminated as he had been before. And in response to that, they gave the exact same line. They felt my presence in the building would be detrimental to the physical and mental well-being of the pupils, and I'd need to be excluded indefinitely. So they excluded me, and this one was to go till the end of the year. So now they've said I'm out for the year. I looked at it and I went, okay, it's ridiculous. I've now lost 4 credits. I've been suspended. This stuff's all on my student record as well. And I've been suspended twice and given 2 exclusion orders. And I've done nothing wrong. I'm going to attend class. They can show their true colors and do whatever they want to do while I'm there. I'm going to go to class and hopefully actually get my credits for the semester. So I attended school that day, and I walked into the school, and they tried to get my phone. I politely declined, and then they told me that I was sitting in class, and they told the entire class it was dismissed. I guess they didn't want any witnesses to what was about to happen. So when they said class was dismissed, I grabbed my bag and left with the class. And then they call everybody back and say, no, they explained they were trying to get me separate. And anyways, I said, look, if you want to talk, I'm not going to make a game out of it. I'll just call my lawyer and we'll go down and talk. Um, and so I did. I called my lawyer. We walked down to the office. And when I stepped foot in the office, the principal stood in front of the exit and informed me there's some people on the way to see me. And a few minutes later, Ontario provincial police officers walked in and told me I was trespassing and I had a trespassing notice and I need to leave. I explained to them I didn't have a trespassing notice. I only had this unlawful exclusion order. And they didn't know that. And they said, well, the principal's asked you to leave, so you need to leave. And I explained to them, I said, if you choose to arrest me, I'm not going to resist, but I'm also not going to leave the building upon a request. This is unlawful. It's discriminatory. I'm here to go to class. Should you arrest me for attending class, that's on you. And so they did. They arrested me and they took me outside. They put me in the cruiser.
Did they cuff? Did they cuff you?
No, they didn't cuff me actually. What happened is, that shows how much of a problematic student I was. What a threat that when they arrested me, they didn't even cuff me. I walked.
Your weapons are words, Josh. They should cuff you. They'll cuff your mouth is what they're basically trying to do. But sorry, carry
on. I walk out. I hold the door for the officers as we're headed out to the cruiser. I help myself into the cruiser. It was a bit of a joke of an arrest, but anyways, they ended up handing me off to my brother. And yeah, I was given a trespassing charge, and that was that for that day.
That's the only time that you've been arrested. Was that the only time you've been arrested?
That was the first time I was arrested.
Okay, now let me add one question before we get to the second time. Is anybody in the school standing up for you? Like, is there no other Spartacus in school, or are people actually like berating you, shouting you as you're being perp walked to the principal's office?
Well, there are students that support me. There were quite a few more before they. When I was kicked out of the school, they'd go class to class and they would talk about me and say that students would have their reputations ruined if they were seen with me, and if they joined the protest, they wouldn't have transportation home and stuff. So there was a lot of fear mongering and intimidation involved there. So I lost some, at least public support from that. And then when they watched me get arrested, students don't want to be arrested at school, so that silenced a lot of kids. But no, I don't have a whole lot of vocal support. I have a lot of private support, but not many are willing to publicize it at this point.
All right, so you get arrested, booked, charged, like the whole thing.
I didn't get booked. I just got they kept me in the cruiser the entire time, and then ended up releasing me on the side of the road.
Okay, so no police terms or bail conditions or things like that.
No, none of that.
Okay, that's the first time. They let you go off, somewhere, and you go home, and they want you to scuttle off and never come back. Are you kicked out of school at this point in time?
Yeah. Like up until today, I'm kicked out for the remainder of the year, and there hasn't been much. They haven't really said if I'll be back next year at all.
Well, and you're losing a year. You're losing a year of study. Like you're going to graduate a year later now, if you can graduate.
If at least a year later.
Okay. Sorry. What's the second time you got arrested?
So the second time I got arrested at the school on February 6th. On February 8th, I had organized a protest outside the National Arts Center, where a drag queen, a transvestite, was reading books to kids. I had communicated with police liaison, and I said, this is where we're going to be. I don't know how many people are going to be here, but we did our best to keep an open line of communication. We agreed upon a location, and the day of, we got pushed away by counter protesters and stuff, which vastly outnumbered us. And my crew from Safe Canada, myself, my brother, and Monty decided to go back to the doors where we had agreed upon for protesting. We went there with our megaphone, and we started giving the gospel. We quoted some scripture and stuff, and within seconds we were attacked, pinned up against the wall. I had my hat ripped off and stomped out, and the police ran into the crowd, and instead of grabbing our attackers, they took us and threw us into the street. They have arrested my brother for being in the street because the police on the sidewalk would push us into the street, and the police on the street would push us onto the sidewalk. So, anyways, they arrested my brother for that and released him within 15 minutes with no charges because it was a joke of an arrest. And then, yeah, a few minutes later, I was still using my megaphone. I was quoting John 3:16 at the time, and a cop told me that if I didn't stop using the megaphone, I'd be arrested for disruption. But disruption isn't even a charge. I think he meant disturbance. But
or mischief. Maybe they meant mischief. They're going to lock you up for 5 months.
So, anyways, they say disruption. They then arrest me, take my camera, which I still haven't gotten back to this day. They claim they never took it. There's footage of them taking it, but they took my camera. They held me in the back of the cruiser for 2 hours with cuffs on, and then they drove me off and dumped me on the side of the road. They didn't contact parents. They didn't contact anybody. They just dumped me on the side of the road and told me not to go back. And then they give me this failed to leave premises charge, a trespassing charge. I was never asked to leave the premises. I was arrested on a public crosswalk, and so the entire arrest was a joke. And then they stole my $600 in camera equipment. So I've gone to the police station multiple times to try to get that back. They say they don't have it. And then they actually phoned my dad for some reason instead of me, and said that my trespassing charge had been dropped, and it was a mistake that they gave me a failed to leave premises charge, and that's where that's at.
All right. I mean, okay. Now I know you have to go in a few minutes. Two questions. What are you going to do to complete your education? Not that some people think it's worth anything more than the paper it's written on. And what do you envision for the future of your life if you're able to see that far ahead? Like, what's your plan for the short and long-term future? And what is your feeling about what is going on in Canada right now? And more specifically, what some might feel to be an outright shameful adults picking on a kid persecution of you?
Well, I have a couple different plans for education. I do want to get my diploma. It's obviously I'm at a bit of I hit a bit of a speed bump, but I think I should be able to get it, whether I take online learning or whatever. But I do plan to get my diploma. As far as my future in activism, I don't know where it'll end up. What I do know is that our government, and not just our government, I mean anybody involved in this globalist agenda recognizes that young people are quite a threat, especially a young person with some sort of influence and just a sense of morality. So I do plan to continue to speak out against what I feel is wrong, and I'm not going to be silenced by the faculty or anybody who would wish to punish me for standing up for what I believe in. It doesn't scare me. I don't really care what my boldness, my courage, and my beliefs are more important than the consequences that get thrown at me by this system. So I'm certainly not going to stop.
Incredible. And people are going to say you're wise beyond your years, but it is weird just seeing a young person with a half functioning brain and more courage than 90% of politicians out there. Do you have aspirations for politics?
I've considered it. I don't really know. Politics it's a dirty game. I don't like politics very much, but I just got off the phone with my local member of parliament, or my provincial member of parliament, and he just completely blew me off. Said that it wasn't his responsibility to speak out against these issues. So it's not something I'd want to get into. If I was going to be a politician, I certainly wouldn't be playing by a party whip or anything like that. I'd be standing up for what I believe in. But that's difficult to do, especially in Canada. But we'll see.
Right. And there's an intelligent comment in our Rumble chat from DVR Downmark who says, Josh, when you turn 18, be careful because then, they might not let you off with some of these charges. And it's going to be a much more vigorous battle against you and the ideology of logic and rational thought that you espouse. Where can people find you and how can they support you?
Yeah, you can donate to my Liberty Defense Fund, or my legal defense fund at libertycoalitioncanada.com. There's a petition you can sign there too. And then just for my organization, we have a Give, Send, Go. And then you can find me on social media. I mainly use Twitter, but I have Instagram and Facebook too. But my Twitter is official Josh_A. But most importantly, just get the word out there. There's not many people that are willing to take this stand, but it's certainly happening. There's been a rise in the resistance towards this gender ideology that's being pushed, and it's happening in both Canada and the States. And we need to keep that fire going to make some change.
All right, man. Flip me all of your links. I'll put them in the pinned comment on both Rumble and YouTube. Josh, let's stay up. Keep us up to date. If anything else new happens, we're in touch. So let me know.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I'll dare say this. Thanks for being a good role model for kids. Like some of the stuff we see younger people doing right now it's what is being valorized and glamorized is not necessarily what is good and righteous and fulfilling lifestyles, life behavior. But Josh, thank you for setting a good example.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one. See you soon.
God bless.